So we're holding, and again, I thank everybody for bearing with me on Friday. That was so embarrassing. Falling asleep in my own shiur. It goes to tell you how exciting a Bagad shiur I am. Very nice. I hope I'm really not that boring. Anyways, so here we go.
Can't be boring.
62B3. 62B3, the bottom of Samach Beis, Samach Beis, the left-hand corner. So to remind everybody, on Yom Kippur, there are two goats. One is La Hashem, for Hashem, which is brought inside, whose blood is sprayed inside the Holy of Holies and the Heichal. At the same time, there's the other one that goes La Zozel, right? The Sir La Zozel, Hashir Mishtaleach, the goat that is sent away to Azazel. Now, these two goats, in determining which one is for Hashem and which one is for Azazel, we have to do a lottery, a goyro. So obviously, both goats have to be standing there at the time of the goyro, which means that both goats at the time of the goyro are standing to be for Lashem, to be brought inside the holy, to be brought inside the Beis Hamikdash, into the Azara and the Kodesh HaKadoshim, which means that at the beginning of the whole process, at the point of the gyro, both animals, both goats, have equal chance of being a Hashem towards Hashem, to be brought inside, which means at that moment in time they have equal kedusha, equal holiness. Keeping this in mind, we proceed with today's Gemara. Tanu Rabbana, the Rabbana learned in a Baraisa. Shnei Seirei Yom HaKippurim Sheshachtem B'chutz. The two goats of the two goats of Yom Kippur, okay, one shechs them, slaughters them on Yom Kippur outside the courtyard, outside the Azara. So that means shchitas b'chutz. They were slaughtered outside, which of course is a terrible aveira. I believe it's chayav kares. So the question is, ad shaloi higril aleim, if he slaughtered them outside the Beis Hamikdash, outside the Azara, before the lottery took place, therefore chayiv al shneihem, he's chayiv on both of them. He's liable on both of them. Why? Because at the moment that they were standing to be for the lottery, they were both capable of being brought inside the Beis Hamikdash, inside the Azara, because they both had an equal probability of being the Hashem, to be brought inside, whose blood would be sprinkled inside the Holy of Holies and the Kodesh HaKadoshim and the Heichal. So since they're both oimid, they're both standing at that moment in time with equal probability to be brought within the Kodesh, therefore, if they're slaughtered outside, you've slaughtered two animals who are capable of being inside animals, holy inside. So you're liable on both. But what about
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So if he's doing it outside the
Azara,
then it doesn't make a difference if he's chayav on one or both. He's still chayav kares.
So the answer is, the question would be, for an example, if what happens if he did it by accident? Does he have to bring one? Is it one chatas or two chatases?
Well, then you're saying if he did before the garol, then he would have two chatases.
Correct. But but if they first had the lottery, so now one was for Hashem and the other one is being told, La Zozel, you're going out. You're being thrown down the mountain. Chayiv al shel Hashem, upoter al shem shel Azazel. He's chayiv on the one that's for Hashem, but not potter the one on Azazel. Why? Because now things are definitive. We did the lottery. I know this animal was for Hashem. The other animal, Azazel, is not slaughtered in the Beis Hamikdash. Its blood is not thrown in the Beis Hamikdash. It is taken and thrown down the mountain. So therefore, it does not have the holiness that brings it to a problem of shchitas chutz. Because in fact, the whole Azazel is a chutz. So there isn't such a problem. Very good. So it says the Gemara, okay, let's analyze this. Actually, here, before the Kohen Gadol does any lottery, and they both have an equal probability of being Lashem, you chayav on both of them, lamai chazu. But wait a minute, before the lottery, what would these sacrifices inside the Beis Hamikdash, what would the goats fit for? Before the lottery takes place, none of them were even allowed to be brought inside on Yom Kippur. The lottery is the trigger that gets everything started. Without the lottery, neither one of these things are allowed to be brought yet. Since they're not allowed to be brought, right? Why are you chayiv on the two of them? It's no different than anything else. Nothing's going on yet. Rav Chisda, because Hoyel, and I'm underlining the word Hoyel. We're being introduced to a new concept here. Hoyel, since the royal lisoyer hanasa b'chutz, since each is fit to be offered as the musif goat, which is done outside the Azara. There's a third goat offering on Yom Kippur, and that is the regular musaf goat that's brought on every Shabbos and every Yom Tif, and on Yom Kippur, there's a musaf brought. The musaf, by definition, has no goyrol. It has no goyrol. So since every one of these animals, these two goats, even though you purchase them with mind to have one La Shem and one La Zazel, you didn't purchase it to have in mind the Musaf, but because the Musaf is also called Minat Torah, is called a Chatos, so they're all under the same classification of a Chatos. The La Shem is a Chatos, La Zazel is a Chatos, and the Musaf is Lachatos. Since they're all under the Rubicon, the same classification, and says Rav Chisda, since it could also be brought as a Musaf, and the Musaf does not require a lottery, so therefore the animals are standing already worthy to be brought within the Azara as a Musaf. So therefore, if you slaughter them, b'chutz yichayev on both. What we've been introduced to here is since there's another possibility of what it could be, and then within that possibility, it would, in this case, it would be right to be brought inside the Azara. Therefore, even if you don't do it and you slaughter it b'chutz, you're out. You're mechayiv, you're liable. We're going to talk about this whole thing a bit more on today's Amid. Hi, Daddy. We're on the bottom of 62b3. Samach Beis, Amid Beis on the bottom.
Okay.
We just said the idea of Hoyel. V'royel l'soy nasa b'chutz. So, pray to Gemara. Why is it not considered fit? As a goat, as a yiga performed inside the Azara, because the Mechutza Garola, it's missing the lottery. And since it's missing the lottery, by definition, the trigger hasn't been pulled yet. Without the lottery, none of these goats are allowed to be brought. And therefore we said, so therefore, it's not considered as a problem of chutz, of being brought sheikhet b'chutz, being offered on the outside the Mizazara, because since they were not roi, they were not worthy at this point to be brought within the Azara, because the lottery had not taken place yet, and without the lottery, the goats cannot be brought. So therefore, if you do slaughter them outside, you're not chayiv on slaughtering outside, at least on one of them. One of them was standing for Hashem, but one of them says the Gemara, if that's the case, but then he should not be fit to be considered to be outside the courtyard. The Hashem one, the Hashem card, one of them that is for Hashem, that's going to be for Hashem, you should not be chayiv liability either, because you're missing the avoidance of the day. If you take a look, the wide line, the first wide line in Rashi, L'sara nasa b'chutz nami loy chazi, the mechasa, because you're missing kol ma'isa avodas hayoim, all the actions of the service of the day. Shalmata demei par v'soyer, the giving, the application of the blood of the bull and the soyer, v'chapinas haketoris, and the scooping up of the ketores, v'haktorah, and the bringing of the ketores, haroyin l'kadel mustafim, all of which are required to be done before you bring the musif. And in fact, if you were to bring the carbon musif before completing any one of these services, avodah, during on Yom Kippur, the musif would be no good, would be useless. In that case, you, Rav Chisda, said, that since these goats are, even though the goyrel wasn't brought yet, so there's nothing to be done with them, they're not ready to be brought in, but they're not ready to be brought within the Azara. Nonetheless, they are ready to be brought in the Azara within Musif, and the Musif is a Chatas, just like they are. Frank, the Gemara over here, what good is that? You can't bring the Musif without doing all the other Abaydas, and you can't do the other Abaydas without the Goyrel in the first place, because you can only bring the two goats. Once you have the Goyrel, I know which is for Lashem, so I know which goat is going to be slaughtered Lashem, and its blood is going to be sprinkled and mixed together with the bull's blood. So the Gemara, Kesaber Rav Chisda, Ein mechusa zaman lavoy bayoy. Rav Chisda says, no, there is no, since the avodah, the services are going to be done today, when we look at the animal here at the beginning of the day, since it's worthy to become a musif at the time when all the avodas are done, it's worthy to become a musif today, when all the avodas are done today. That's not how we look at it. That's not a problem. Says Rav Chisda, it's considered as if with those avodas are already here, and therefore you will have a problem of shchitas chutz. You'll have a problem of slaughtering it outside, because it is worthy of being brought into the Azara, even without the lottery, but it is worthy to be brought into the Azara as a chatas, a musaf chatas. Says the Gemara, Amar Ravina, and stop me if you got questions on this, because it's not the easiest Gemara to grasp in one hand. Amar Ravina, hashta the Amar Rav Chisda mechusa goyrola kimechusa ma'asidami. Now that Rav Chisda said that the goat lacking the lottery, which means it can't get started, is lacking in action, and therefore you're not over on bechutz, right? Except for the fact of the musif. Hadi Amar Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel Shalom im sheshachtim koidim shenifchu dalas ha'eichel pesulin. Shalom, that one slaughtered before the doors of the heichal were opened, is considered invalid. Shenema v'shachtu pesach hayomayim, You shall slaughter the shlomims at the entrance of the Yomi, the tent of meeting, which of course it corresponds to the Heichal and the Beis Hamikdash. Bisman shu pesuach. That's at a time when its entrance is open. Shvishaloi bisman shu no, but not when it's locked. Which therefore leads us to say, and now we're on today's daf, 63A1, 63A1 Samach Gimel Amid Aleph, Shachta B'chutz, Koidim Sheniftachu Daska Dal Seisa Heichol, that if he slaughtered them outside the courtyard, outside the Azara, before the doors of the Heichel were open, Potter, he's Potter. Why? My Tama, Mechusa B'sicha, the Mechusa Maisadami, lacking the opening of the doors is like lacking an action. So if you slaughtered the shlamim outside the Azara, let's say in the edge, Asnashim, in the women's courtyard, but not in the Azara, before the doors open, you're not liable, because at that moment in time they weren't allowed to be brought inside. Since they were not allowed to be slaughtered and brought up on inside, it's as if they're nothing at the moment. So you're not chayav b'chutz. So now we go back to the hoyel. Umi islay l'Rav Chisda hoyel, but does Rav Chisda really hold from the idea of since it could be brought as a chatos musif, which does not require a goyrol, right? Therefore, you chayav on shchitas chutz. I bought it. I bought these two animals, these two goats. I bought them, one to be Lashem and one to be Lazozel. I didn't purchase it to be a musif. Doesn't matter because it said hoyel. You're allowed to say since with this animal, I can make it into a musif, and a musif can be brought without a gairol. Therefore, it's oimid to be brought within the azara. Therefore, you're over already on shchitas chutz. Says the Gemara, is that a fact? A Pesach that was slaughtered outside the Beis Hamikdash during the rest of the year, meaning not on the 14th of Nisan, not on Erev Pesach. So in other words, you designated an animal to be your Pesach, and then you forgot, and you slaughtered it outside. You slaughtered it in Adar, you slaughtered it in the middle of the winter before Pesach arrived. Lishmai Potter, for its own sake. In other words, if you slaughtered it not in its time, but for the sake of a Pesach, you're not liable, because now is not the time to bring a Pesach. So just because you called it a Pesach and you had in mind to slaughter a Pesach, the Pesach offering, the Korban Pesach, is only brought on the afternoon of the 14th of Nisan. Anything prior to that, or after that, as it were, is meaningless. So therefore, it's meaningless. You're not chayav for shchitas chutz. Okay? But shaloi lishmai. But if you don't bring it for its sake, but you bring it for the sake of a shlamim, you're chayav. Because the Gemara in Masechta Zavachim teaches us that a Pesach shaloi bismanoi, a Korban Pesach not in its time, when it's not in its time, is automatically a shlamim. Becomes automatically, is accepted as a shlamim. So since it's automatically accepted as a shlamim, if it's a shlamim, shaloi l'shma, if you brought it not for its sake, but for the sake of a shlamim, you're chayiv because it's a good shlamim. And if it's a good shlamim, it's supposed to be brought inside the Beis Hamikdash. You didn't bring it inside the Beis Hamikdash, you're chayiv at shchitas chutz. So says the Gemara, wait a minute. Tama shaloi l'shma. That's only because he brought it not for its own sake, for the sake of a shlamim. Mashma, it seems to mean stama, that he brought it with no intent at all. He just slaughtered it. Lishmayu upater, that it would be like its name, and it would be potter. It would be potter. That stam is like bringing it l'shem Pesach, and l'shem Pesach you potter because it's nothing outside of the afternoon of Yudal and Nisan. V'amai. Why would you be potter? Lema hoyel, say since. What's the sense? V'rayu shaloi l'shmai b'pnim. Because it's rayi to be brought not for its sake, but for the sake of a shlamim inside the Beis Hamikdash. Since the whole year a Pesach has a din of a shlamim that, and if you brought it inside the Beis Hamikdash, you brought it inside the Asara, it would be a good shlomim. Since I could bring this as a shalomim, therefore I should be chayiv b'mishchitas chutz. Says the Gemara, no comparison. Hachiyash, what are you talking about? Ha sambaya akira. With regard to Pesach, you require a conscious uprooting of its designation. And until then, the animal is not fit to be brought outside. That means it's not fit to be brought inside because it's not the afternoon of Erev Pesach. It's not the afternoon of Pesach. You don't bring the Karban Pesach. You can't bring something for a Karban Pesach if it's not the time for the Karban Pesach. So therefore, you have to physically change its. You have to physically change its designation. You have to change its designation. So you have to do an action. So there you're obviously what it will do. If you do the action, you chayiv as shchitas chutz. Ha Lord Akira. But here by the goat of Yom Kippur, you don't need a conscious uprooting because a goat is good to be used as the chatas for the musaf. You automatically could use this goat for the musaf. Since you could automatically use this goat for the musaf, I don't have to do any action. I don't have to say, this goat is going to be used for a chatas musaf. I don't have to do that. The moment it's standing there, it could be used for Lashem. It can be used for Lazazel, depending on the goyrel. And it can be used for the musaf, which is also a chatas. So therefore, it could automatically be used. You don't have to say a word. Nothing goes on. So that's a different ball game. Since it's intrinsically, without any action, standing here to be brought as a musaf, I then have a problem that it's roy to be brought in the Azara as a musaf now. Therefore, if I slaughter it outside, I'm chayav on shchitas chutz. And now the Gemara says we've been learning up this Gemara like Rav Chitzda. The Gemara, just to be as always, is very careful on who it brings its names as. Rabba Bashimi Masala Karabba. Rabba Bashimi learned these two statements of Rav Chitzda in the name of Rabba. The Kashlei the Rabba the Rabba. And he asked the questions of Rabba and the Rabba, and he resolved it exactly like we resolved it. That Hasam Baya Akira, hi Loi Baya Akira. Kiyos Rabdini came to bubble from Eretz Yisrael. Amar Rabbi Yomi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, and he said that Rabbi Yomi had said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, pay such a shachtu b'chutz, b'shvisha you might say son, a pesach, an animal that was set aside to be a pesach, a goat that was set aside, or a sheep that was set aside to be a pesach the rest of the year. Bain lishmai, whether you slaughter it for the name of a pesach. Bain shaloi lishmai, whether you slaughter it for the name of a shalomim potter, your potter. So now the Gemara says, Amar Abdimi, Amina lishmata kamei Rabbi Yemi. I repeated this to Rabbi Yemi. Bishlama lishmai. God's good if I understand he's not liable if he slaughters it for its own sake. Because it's not fit to be opened inside the Azara with that attention, because the Pesach is not a Pesach the rest of the year. But if he brings it, if it's not for its sake, for the sake of Islamim, why is he potter? It's fit to be offered inside the Beis Hamikdash because a Pesach the rest of the year has a din of a Shalomim, and it's a perfectly good Shalomim, so it's worthy to be brought inside the Beis Hamikdash in the courtyard to be slaughtered as a Shalomim. So if you slaughter it outside, you should be chayiv for shchitas chutz, for slaughtering outside. Amali, and now he said, Akiras chutz lav shemei akira. Look at Rashi. The Rashi is on the side of the Gemara, right where it says Taisvis Yishonim, in the right column of the Gemara. You go down a line, you see over there the Rashi, Akira's chutz, Akira shem b'shchitas chutz, loy shemei Akira. Ime hechsha akosav pesach b'shah yemais hashana b'shlomim, lo yichshiru elo b'fnim. V'Akiras Hashem, avol b'toich, b'chutz li'olam shemay Allah. Rashi is saying that where we want a change of a name only works in the place where it's right to be brought. If you're in the temple itself, in the Beis Hamikdash itself, and you're standing in the Azara, and you say, I'm now taking this Pesach, and I'm slaughtering it l'shem shalomim, that change works. But if the animal is a Pesach, and it's outside, it's in the middle of Yerushalayim, it's in the Ezes Noshim, it's in the women's courtyard, it's out, it's on the Harabayas, it's on the mountain itself, it's not in the Azara. Says Rabdim, it says Rabbi Yirmiyah, Akira schutz lav shemei Akira. Uprooting a designation of a sacrifice outside the Beis Hamikdash, outside the Azara, is not considered an uprooting because it bechlal cannot be brought. If it's not where it could be brought, it's nothing. It's such a nothing that you don't even have the power to uproot it to change its name. So therefore, if you uprooted it outside l'shem shlomim and slaughtered l'shem shlomim, even though the carbon basic is perfectly capable of being brought as a shlomim inside the Beis Hamikdash, nonetheless, it does not change its name. It's stuck as a Pesach, and a Pesach the rest of the year is nothing. Good. We're now on 63A2. 63A2. I'm assuming nobody's asked me any questions, that it's still making sense. Okay? But if it doesn't, please stop me. Says the Gemara, Ki also Ravin, when Ravin came to Babel from Eretz Yisrael, Amar Rabbi Yemi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, he said that Rabbi Yemi said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Pesach sheshachtu b'chutz t'shayim ha'isashana, a Pesach that's slaughtered outside the Beis Hamikdash. The rest of the year, bein l'shmai, bein shaloi l'shmai, chayiv. This version has, whether for its own name, whether not for its own name, for shlomim, you are chayiv for you're liable for bringing it, slaughtering it outside. This is just the opposite of the version we had before. So says the Gemara, says the exact same Gemara, just from the other point of view. Is he liable even if he brings it for its own sake, for the sake of a Pesach? But tonight we learned in the Mishnah regarding like the Isser of slaughtering, Shchitas Chutz, slaughtering, offering a sacrifice outside the Beis Hamikdash. We say like this: there are exemptions. Mechusas the man, the exemption of a premature offering is ben begufai, ben bebailim. Whether the animal itself is problematic, meaning it's less than 8 days old. An animal is not allowed to be brought in the Beis Hamikdash. You're not even allowed to slaughter it, to be totally honest, until it's 8 days old. The first 7 days, it is not going to be brought. It has to be 8 days old. The other problem would
By the way, in Shechita, we also hold until today, because we specifically do what we call bob calves. Specifically, they have a lot of rennet in it, okay, when they're making non-trace cheeses. We cannot do it till the 9th day.
The 9th day, just to be on the safe side. Wow, I didn't know that. So you heard Jerry, you saying that this is a klal in Shechita, so much so that they are makbid, obviously, to be going extra 24 hours to make sure they don't run into this problem. A secondary one, which I don't know how Jerry handles this today, we're not allowed to slaughter an animal the same day that its mother was slaughtered. If the mother is slaughtered, the next day, you have to wait another 24 hours for the child to be slaughtered. I don't know how in the actual shechita business, how you keep track of that. There must be a tracking system. I don't know.
The tracking system is the following, is that basically what you do, the bob calves, which are the ones that are 9 days plus old, you're killing them in one particular day. And the ones that are basically 32 months old or 30 months old, you're killing that the next day, either the day before or the day after.
Got it. Wow, that's brilliant. So thank you. I did not know that. I've always wondered about that. So you hear what Jerry's saying. It's brilliant. that they're going to wait till the 9th day for the kids, and then the mothers, by definition, the amount of months that are required that a gestation to be a mother is always the day after, because the problem is mother-child, not child-mother. Interesting. Very good. So back into point. Thank you, Jerry. Wow, I just learned. See, you're never too old to learn new stuff. There you go. There you go. So, but Tanan, if you're dealing with a premature offering, ben begufai, that it's not 8 days old, or ben bebailim, that the time for the owners to bring their sacrifices have not arrived. And what is that? The Azim bebailim. What does this mean? A premature. It's too early for the bailim to be bringing their animals. Hazav, someone who's a zav, va'zavar, or a woman who's a zava. Va'yolet, there's a woman who gave birth. Bahamid Sairo, one who had biblical leprosy. She'ekribu chatosa va'asham b'chutz, who offer their chatas and asham offerings outside the Beis Hamikdash before they were eligible to do so. So, for an example, the amount of days that a woman has to wait, or the 7 clean days of a zavar, or the Mitzayra didn't yet wait all his days and get the okay from the Kohen. Right? The answer is Peturin. They would be potter, they would not be liable for shchitas chutz, for slaughtering outside, because the animals were not standing to be brought inside the Beis Hamikdash. But the Mitzayers, especially, are saying Bishalmei b'chutz. But if they offer their oilers and their shlomims outside, chayovim, they are chayiv. They are chayiv because they're royal to be l'shlomim, right? Because not royal l'shlomim. What do you call it? They're chayovim. Even though it doesn't patter up the chiyuvim, even though it doesn't patter up the chiyuvim, but because the oilers and the shlamim are allowed to be brought as nidavos, they're allowed to be brought as donations. So even though by bringing his oilers and his shlamim now, it's too early to bring the oilers and the shlamim. But because you can also bring the oilers and the shlamim as the davos, as donations, so therefore they are royi. They are standing to be sacrificed inside the Beis Hamikdash because they have a capability as donative oilers and shlomims. Therefore, if you slaughter it outside, it's no good. What about the Osham and the Chatos? The answer is that an Osham and a Chatos cannot be brought as Nedovos. You cannot donate sin offerings. Sin offerings can only be brought because you did a sin. If you didn't do a sin, you can't bring a Chatos. There's no such thing as a donative Chatos and Osham. There's only a donative on the double of oilos and shlomim. Since there's even though you brought it early and they're not oimid to be brought now, since they have another capability of being brought as donative oilos and shlomim, therefore you're on shchitas chutz. And said Rav Chelki bar Tavi, Lo shanu elo l'shmai. This ruling regarding the Osham, right? Except in the case where it's slaughtered for its own sake, right? Because if the Osham is slaughtered for its own sake, it cannot, at this point, it's not ready yet to be brought in the Beis Hamikdash because the time, it's mechusar zaman, it's premature, it's not meant to be brought now. And since an Osham cannot be a Nedova, it's not a problem. You putter Abel Shaloi Lishmai. But what happens if you change its name to an Oila or a Shlamim? He would be liable. Because an Asham slaughtered not for its own name, but for the name of an Oila or a Shlamim, can be brought as a sacrifice in the Beis Hamikdash. It will not achieve atonement for its owner, that it will not do, but it will work. So therefore we got the promise. It says the Gemara, L'shmai miya potter. What do you see from over here that regarding that if he slaughters the asham for its own sake and it's premature, it's mechutz zaman, it's not yet the time, it's potter. Amai, why do you say that? Neima say hoyol, since the royal shalai l'shmai b'fnim, since say that it is still possible, it's still roy, it's still roy, not to be brought, not for its own sake. If you change its name to a shlamim or an oila, it is yet capable of being brought within the azara. So then you should be mechayiv on shchitas chutz. Says the Gemara, the same answer we gave before. Hachi hashta. Somebody akira by the osham. You require uprooting. You have to physically say, I'm changing its classification from an asham to an oil or shlamim. But a Pesach the rest of the year, any time other than the afternoon of the 14th of Nisan, any other time other than the afternoon of Erev Pesach, it's automatically, without you saying the word, it automatically becomes a shlamim. Since it's automatic, it's always standing to be brought in the base of Mikdash. It's always standing by the Mikdash. I got the problem of shchitas chutz. Very good. We're now on 63.83. So says the Gemara, Rav Ashi Maslich Kai. So now we had two reports of Rabbin. On one it said Bein Lishmai, Bein Shalai Lishmai Potter, and one it said Bein Shalai Lishmai, Bein Shalishmai, Bein Shalai Lishmai Chayev. So Rav Ashi Maslich Chayev Kedamrinon. Rav Ashi taught Rabbin as ruling that if you slaughter the Pesach, whether for its own name or whether for a different name, you are chayiv for shchitas chutz. Rabbi Yirmiyah b'difti masnisim potter. Rabbi Yirmiyah b'difti learns it just the opposite. That Rabbi Yirmiyah said whether shalishmai, whether shalai lishmai, whether for its own sake or not for its own sake, the rest of the year you're potter. Yesaba, because he holds Pesach shayim oiseh shani baya akira. He says Pesach, the rest of the year, does require akira. According to Rabbi Yirmiyah ben Difti, a Pesach does not become an automatic shlamim, even if you do nothing. It remains the same Pesach unless you go ahead and you change its classification. You change its classification to a shlamim, then it works, but you have to physically change its classification. And the rule is, V'akira schutz lav shemei akira. And he holds that an akira, an uprooting outside, if it's not within the environs of the Beis HaMikdash of the Azara, it's in the wrong place, it's outside, therefore you cannot bring it regardless at this present moment. So therefore it's nothing. So therefore you changing any classification is absolutely meaningless. Who clearly said before that Akira Chutz, Shemei Akira, who said yes, and Akira's Chutz is called an Akira. Hang on 1 second. Here we go. So, Amamah. Sorry about this. Here we go. Amamah. Shishehirgul Aleim. We said before that if he slaughtered the two goats, the one Lashem, one Lazazel, after the Kohen Gadol does the lottery. So we know which one is for Lashem, and we know which one is for Lazazel. We said Chayiv al Hashem. You're Chayiv on the one that's for Hashem, because that one is royal to be brought, is obviously going to be brought inside, and its blood is going to be sprayed in the Kodesh HaKadoshim and the Heichal. But you're not liable for the one going to Azazel, because it's not slaughtered. It's thrown down the mountain outside the base of Mikdash. There are no blood applications. So therefore, it's got nothing to do with inside. It's never right to be brought inside the Azara. So therefore, if it's never right to be brought inside the Azara, it therefore is chutz. Tanu Rabbana, the Rabbanan say like this. The pasuk says as follows regarding the Seiri La Azazel, which has two names. Seire La Azazel, the goat that's going to La Azazel, or Seire Hamishtaleach, the seer that's being sent away. It means the same thing. Okay, it's interchangeable. The pasuk says as follows: Ishish mibeis Yisrael, a man from the house of Israel, sheyishchat shoroi kesev oyev b'machne, who will slaughter an ox, sheep, or goat in the camp. Oya sheyishchat b'chutz lamachne, who will slaughter it even outside the camp. Vel pesach oil moed, but by the entrance of the oil moed, loyaviu, he did not bring it. Lahakriv carbon Lashem, to bring it as an offering to Hashem. This is what the pasuk says regarding us also. So now we're on Amud Beis, Samach Gimel Amud Beis. Says the Gemara like this: carbon, or perhaps the word carbon means to teach me that one is liable for slaughtering, for sacrificing outside the Azara, even animals that were made holy for the Bedek Habayis, for the Beis Hamikdash's upkeep, for the temple upkeep, not to be brought on the Mizbeach, but to be used to purchase and what do you call it? For the budget and the upkeep of the Beis Hamikdash. Shekniku carbon, because they too are called an offering. Bein and Shenema, like it says, the Nakrev is Karban Hashem, and we have brought an offering for Hashem, and this is by a pasuk that's talking about Bedek Habayis, upkeep. Talmud Laima, therefore the Torah comes to teach Vel Pesach Oyel Moyed Lo Yeviyu, and to the entrance of the Oyel Moyed, he does not bring it. That means Kol Royal Le Pesach Oyel Moyed Chayav Alav Lechutz, anything that's fit to be brought to the tent of meeting, or in our terminology, anything that's worthy to be brought, is fit to be brought into the Heichal, one is liable for slaughtering it outside. Anything that's not fit to be brought into the tent of meeting or to be brought into the Heichal is not chayav b'chutz. Since Azazel, the Siri Azazel, is being sent out and is not royal to be brought in to the Beis Hamikdash, to be opened in the Beis Hamikdash, once the lottery has taken place. Therefore, there's no, once the lottery has taken place, you put to with if you slaughter the Azazel outside. So therefore, I come to exclude, to take out anything that's not fit to be brought into the Heichal, onto the tent of meeting. Which means I do not take out paras chatas v'sora mishtaleach. I do not take out the like this week's parsha, the para aduma, and the sora mishtaleach, the sol azazel. Let's stop right here. Paras chatas, Rashi actually takes out the words. Rashi says, Lo yoitzi paras chatas. This is about 15 lines. It's 12 lines into the skinny lines of Rashi. Loi garsinon. Do not be gairis the words paras chatas. Shav he ain't a royal loyal moyed, because the para aduma is not brought inside the oil moyed. It's actually slaughtered on Harazaisim, on the Mount of Olives. So we pull it out. Okay, it happens to be that Taisus on the side and goes through and says, actually, this is not as simple as you think. But basically, so we're going to take out the word paraschatas. So let's go back to the Gemara over here. But he's not, I do not know to exclude the Sarah Mishtaleach, Shahu Roy Loboyel Pesach Hayamayit, which is fit to coming into the Pesach Vedi, because before the lottery, before we do a gyro, both goats have equal probability of being La Hashem. So at the time when you're putting both goats in the Azara to do the gyro, to do the lottery, they both have capabilities of being inside the temple, inside the Azara. So therefore, I might think, since there is a moment in time when it could be Roy to be brought inside before the Gairel, I might think you're therefore chayev if you slaughter it outside. Talmud loyma lashem. Only one that's designated exclusively Lashem, not one that's not exclusively Lashem. When it's standing there before the lottery, it has a 50-50 probability of being for Lashem, but it also has a 50-50 probability of being for Lazazel. So it's not Kulai Lashem. It's only Kulai Lashem when?
After the Gairel.
So it's not a problem. And therefore the Azazel is not Roi after the Gairel to be inside the Beis HaMikdash. So you're not Chayiv Shchitas Chutz. Says the Gemara, Vil Hashem lo haitziu. But does the word Hashem really come to exclude the Azazel goat? Viriminu, but that can't be. Let's take a look at this Paraisa. The Paraisa says regarding a newborn animal, it goes, B'yoyim Hashmini, on its 8th day, carbon Ishal Hashem. It shall be accepted for a fire offering to Hashem to be brought up on the Mizbeach. Elu Eishim. This refers to the fires of the Mizbeach, teaching us that you're not allowed to bring up onto the Mizbeach an animal less than 8 days old. As Jerry was very kind enough to explain to us exactly how it works today, even. How do we know that not only that you should also not only not bring in such an animal, you shouldn't even be mekadesh, you shouldn't consecrate, you shouldn't make it holy, an animal that's not yet reached 8 days. It's premature. Talmud loyma carbon. The Talmud of the pasuk says yiratza lekarbon, that it needs to be worthy to be a carbon. La Hashem, and therefore the extra word La Hashem is La Rabbi Sareh Mishtaleach, to include the Sareh Mishtaleach, the goat that's going to be thrown down the mountain over there, teaching us that such an animal should not be designated as the animal Lazazel unless it's 8 days old. Anything less than 8 days old doesn't belong there. So what do you see? That the Brisa uses the word for La Hashem to include, not to exclude, to include the Azazel goat. Then it also has to be 8 days old. In that case, it's to include. It should be included as an animal that's royally inside, and you should be able to shchitas chutz. Amarava ha samna. Don't get hung up on Lashem. Lashem is used in the way the pasuk needs it to be used. Here it's coming in the context of the pasuk, and here it's coming in the context of the pasuk. El Pesach l'rabbis. There in the case, it coming to include the Azazel goat. The word El Pesach comes to include the Azazel goat, and I might think Yechayiv on Shchitas Chutz. La Hashem lahaitzi, the word Hashem pulls it out. Hacha di isha lahaitzi. Here, just the opposite word. Lekarvin isha, the fires of the Mizbeach, when we come to exclude the goat, the Azazel goat, because the Azazel goat is never brought on the Mizbeach, it's thrown down the mountain. La Hashem la rabbis, therefore Hashem comes to include that in Kol said that it's not going to be brought on the Mizbeach. It's still you cannot bring an Azazel goat that's less than 8 days old.
Yeah, but you know, it's not. I don't understand this because it becomes a lazozel only after the agrola, after the
Gairel, right?
But before that, it could have been. It was 50-50 that it could become Lashem.
So that's why.
Therefore, automatically they could not be less than 8 days old. Had to be 8 days old.
Right. That is a
so
very.
Why do you need the whole business?
That's a very good question. It's a very good question. What we're trying to say, the Gemara seems to be saying, it's true. Since the Gemara made it a point, La Hashem, Mishim Yuchodin La Hashem, only something that's completely miyuchedes l'Hashem.
Then it has to be 8 days old.
Which means, then it has to be a deal. That means when the probability is 50-50 even, maybe not. So at the point of the gyro, before the gyro, who said that I have to put an 8-day-old kid here? I don't.
Because it might be Hashem.
But it might not be Hashem. Equal opportunity. It's not miyuchid l'Hashem. So I'm going to take my chances. I'm going to take my chances of bringing a 7-day-old baby, a 7-day-old animal. That's the logic behind it. Okay. That's the logic behind it. You have to flow both pieces of Gemara, otherwise your question's good. And now the Gemara is going to go a simple further. Tama de Rabbi Rachmana, and this is where we're going to stop. Tama de Rabbi Rachmana. Well, actually, we're going to go Tama de Rabbi Rachmana. The reason why that we say that you can now let it designate an animal less than 8 days old is because the Torah said Lashem, Haloi Rabbi. But if you did not say the word Lashem, Hava Aminis Sora Mishnalei Kodesh B'Mechus Zaman. I might have said that the Sora Mishnaleach, the sword that's going Lazozo would be good if it's less than 7 days. How is this possible? My father's question. Because the gyro, right? Has to make it, in fact, it has to be for Hashem. Daddy, your question, you jumped the gun.
I didn't see this.
You didn't turn like in the children's book. Turn the page, right? So there you go. Here's the question before the gyro, since they have a 50-50 probability of being Hashem. No, break my father. They all have to be at least 8 days old because the Hashem one, certainly, the one that's inside, certainly has to be 8 days old. Rabbi Yosef says, Rabbi Yosef, I'll tell you who the town of the Bryce is. Hamani Chanan HaMitzri. It's Chanan the Egyptian, who holds that sometimes you don't need a lottery. The Tanya, he learned, Chanan HaMitzri Yomi, Chanan HaMitzri said, Afilu dam b'kois, if there's blood of the Chatas bull, if the Chatas bull had this blood in a cup, and then the goat that was designated for Azazel after the Goyrel passes away, dies, maybe Chaveroi u'misavikloi. He brings another goat and he replaces the dead one and he pierces it with the blood, because the blood is not allowed to be thrown until after the Goyrel takes place. So now, the
no agrola.
Right, and it's not, the second one has no, obviously you put it in the marketplace, It has no lottery. The blood of the Chatas is then applied in that Azazel goat is sent away. So according to Chanan HaMitzri, the phrase to Hashem is needed to teach us that the new Azazel goat does not, which was not chosen by a lottery, still also has to be 8 days old. Because the only reason why you would have said, my father's question said, since they're both standing to be in the lottery, since they're both standing, they both have to have a chance. They both have to be right to be Lashem, which is only 8 days old or more. So how could you even have a Havamina that one of them would be less than 8 days old? Come to the Gemara to tell us, because if one of them did die, if the Azazel would die, and you pick and you take out you buy one in the marketplace. You buy one in the marketplace, no problem. It's no lottery. It's no lottery. It could be less than 8 days old. Kamash Malon, then no. Says the Gemara, no answer, right? So now the Gemara says, Ema deshmatele lechanan amitzi the lesle duchit. But maybe you could say that Chanan HaMitzri does not hold from the principle of rejection. You see, rejection is this. The blood of the bull is connected to the goats, because they cannot be brought unless the Goyrel took place and those goats are here. If one of those goats should die, according to other Mandiyamas, it's according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's pushed off completely. It's gone. If you take a look, the last Rashi in the skinny lines, look at the last Rashi in the skinny lines. The Lesle Dechuyin, the Lesle Shahaya Adam Dochi. He doesn't hold that the blood became rejected. Bishvil Chaveri, because of the chaver, the goat, shemes. Loima yishbei chadam, saying that you need to now pour out the blood. You can't use the blood, and you need to bring a new bull. Kidi Amar Rabbi Yehuda, like Rabbi Yehuda holds. B'masnisin, like Rabbi Yehuda holds in the Mishnah over there in Zavachim, I believe.
No, our Mishnah.
Our Mishnah itself. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, our Mishnah. Beisa mishtaleach. Beisa mishtaleach. If the Azazel goat dies, Yishbei Chadam, you have to pour out the dam. Right, that's the way we reviewed at the end of the Mishnah. So the Leslie says the Gemara, he holds it's not rejected. All you do, it's still good blood. You just need to bring another animal. The Leslie I gyro mi Shabbatlay. But did you ever hear him say that you don't need to bring a gyro? Dilma Maisimu Margo. Maybe he holds that no, the blood is good, but you actually have to buy two animals again in the marketplace and redo the lottery. And if you have to redo the lottery, they both have to be at least 8 days old. One more answer, we're almost done over here. Ella Amar Rav Yosi, Ha'amani, Rav Shimoni. I can tell you the price is Rav Shimon. The Tanya Meis Echad Mehen. If one of the goats dies after the gyro is cast, maybe Chaveri Shaloi B'gyro. He brings its fellow goat without casting gad. He gets another animal and he pairs it with the living animal. Divrei Reb Shimon. So according to Reb Shimon, therefore the pasuk is teaching us that even in such a case, if it's the Azazel goat that passed away and you're grabbing another goat from the marketplace, it needs to be at least 8 days old. Ravina Amar Kegoin Shehumam V'chilu Alach. The pasuk is coming to teach us where the Azazel goat became blemished. He got a blumum after the lottery, and therefore he redeemed it with another animal. Said that's the rule. An animal that's kodesh that gets a balmum gets redeemed onto another animal. So the new goat that's full Azazel gets its sanctity from the animal that already underwent the lottery. And it doesn't need its own lottery. So therefore the pasuk is required to teach us, and nonetheless it needs to be at least 8 days old. Umar Tamir the Apostle Beimuma, and who tells us that there's such a thing that a blemish invalidates the Azazel goat? Because logic would say, why do I care?
You're going to kill it anyway.
It's being thrown down the mountain anyways. Yeah. So who cares if it's got a blemish? The Tanya, because we learned in a Baraisa, the Isha like to mayhem. It says regarding blemished animals, and you shall not place any of them as a fire offering on the Mizbeach to Hashem. This refers to the sacrificial parts. I might have thought that meant all the sacrificial parts are not allowed to be brought up. Miksa minayin. How do I know that even a kezayis portion of them is not allowed to be brought up onto the Mizbeach? Talmud Leibman mayhem from them, from any of them. Mizbeach, Zuzarikas Domin. This is talking about throwing the bloods of Baalei Mumim, of blemished animals on the Mizbeach. La Hashem, La Rabbi Sorah Mishtaleach. And the term to Hashem comes to add the Sorah Mishtaleach. So you see that a blemished animal is invalid to use for the Azazel. Okay, says the Gemara, why do I need all of this? The Itzach Lemichtach Balmum. And I had to write the case of the blemished animal. The Itzach Lemichtach B'chus, and I had to write down about the premature animal. That means before 8 days. Because if the pasuk had only written that as long as it's not allowed to come from an animal that's less than 8 days old, mishum deloy mati samane, because its time has not yet arrived. Avo balmo, with regard to a blemished animal. The mati samani, its time arrived. Emalahi, I would say that the azazel is not included in this invalidation, since you're throwing it down the mountain anyways, and it's by
it
time.
Should be good, yeah.
It might be good. Kamash Malan, we needed to tell us that it's no good.
Right.
Because a Balmum is offensive. You're not supposed to bring anything that is a Balmum, right? But a premature animal is not offensive. A Malay, I would say, it's the Azazel is not included in this invalidation. We therefore need Okay, and
That's
one
good.
last case. I know we're on tomorrow's daf, but one more case. Samach Dalet Amid Aleph. Here we go. Rava Omar Rava says, it's a case where one who sold the goat to the Beis Hamikdash had a seriously ill person in the house, the Shochat Imoy B'Yom Kippurim, and he slaughtered the mother of the goat on Yom Kippur. Look at the top Rashi. Mechusas Zaman. The Itzrich Kra, we need a puzzle is Stora Mishtaleach for the soy that's for the goat that's going to Azazel. Could going for an example. Shahayu Loila Misha Moichrin, to the one who sold them this animal that's going to go to Azazel. Litzibor, who sold this animal to the community. Chayla b'seich beisa, he had a sick person in his house. Shemutul lechalal olav Yom Kippur, where it's absolutely mutter, allowed to be mechalel, to break the Yom Kippur. V'shachet is imoy selsoya shenasim mechutz zaman, and to slaughter the mother of the goat that was, and therefore, and that was the same, which creates a mechutz zaman, which is what we talked about before with Jerry, where you're not allowed to slaughter the child on the same day as the mother. Mishum oisai v'es because of the isser of slaughtering her and her child. After the gyro was done. Since in such a case, the pasuk comes to teach us that goat is not allowed to be used as the azazel, since it's not allowed to be slaughtered until the next day. So praying to Gemara, if that's true, but what's the answer of the goat that's going lazazel? The pasuk says you're not allowed to slaughter a mother and a child on the same day. Pushing it off the mountain is not shchita. After the Gemara, they said in the West, since the Torah said throw the goat off the cliff, that is very good, everybody.